This is it, guys. It's the last episode. Gutsy Media Podcast officially ends right now. But before we go, enjoy this last episode. Me and Alec discussed Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. He was my first guest. He's my last guest. 43 episodes, 45 recorded. We had 2 that we never released. Actually, they're from season 1. They just had really bad audio early on in the podcast. Thanks to everybody for downloading and supporting. I really appreciate it. This was a fun little hobby. It lasted as long as I wanted it to. And I got to explore some really awesome movies and really get outside my comfort zone and discuss them with some great people, some great friends. I like how the show evolved throughout the years. And who knows, maybe I'll get bored enough to do it again. Some of my favorite movies, season 1, I really like Murder Crows. You guys know that. That was one of my early picks. First episode we ever did, actually. Sisters Brothers was a surprising, pretty decent movie. Wind River was pretty good. Season 2, 1917 is amazing. Asphalt Jungle was pretty cool to watch. Predestination has become one of my favorite movies of all time now. So that was kind of cool to have seen that on the podcast. And then obviously season 3 was just full of amazing hits because of the challenge we put out. Again, guys, thanks for letting me do this. And without further ado, on with the show.
Get that out of the way.
Get that out of the way. I am very excited to have in front of me a good friend of mine, first guest ever on the podcast, last guest ever on the podcast, Alec Weck. What's up,
You're
buddy?
first, you're last, you're everything. I love a bookend. To me, it's such a complete, it's a thing, right?
We're both movie buffs. I couldn't think of a better person to do this episode with that was available. And I think, having you on as the first and last guest, I think it's great. And by the way, kudos. Is it bad that I only know that quote from Money Talks and not from the actual song?
What quote? You're first, you're last, you're everything?
Yeah. It's from a song.
It's in Money Talks?
Yeah, he quotes it as a toast.
You're right.
As a mother-in-law looks at him and is like, "Oh, you fuck."
That's hilarious.
Great movie. Right. Underrated movie.
No. Appropriately rated movie.
Who would have thought that Charlie Sheen would have played a normal person in that movie? Like a very straightforward, normal. He's a reporter, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He's a TV. He's funny in that regard. Actors are known for portraying characters that are not themselves.
Right.
He never really plays a crazy role, right?
Just in real life.
He never plays anybody with AIDS.
I forgot he has AIDS. Oh, it sucks. Ironically enough, the guy in this movie who played I'm about to drop back. This movie, by the way, that we're talking about, which we'll get into why this movie was picked in a second. But this movie is Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. And the guy who plays Marcus Brody in this movie actually found out he had AIDS just prior to the filming. So good segue there, bringing up the AIDS. Good for you.
I'm shocked. I thought he had Alzheimer's. He had AIDS.
He had AIDS. Like the actual actor, he found out he had AIDS just prior to the filming of this movie.
I haven't talked about AIDS in about a week or so, and for the fact that we somehow bring together these two AIDS moments is just remarkable.
So yeah, you picked 1989's action-adventure film Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, starring Harrison Ford from Star Wars and The Fugitive, Sean Connery from The Untouchables and The Hunt for Red October, and Alison Doody.
Yes.
Doody, who's actually was in a few of the Walking Dead episodes and Major League 2. It was give kudos to the female lead.
When you become an actor, you can create your name. You can make one up.
Well, here's the thing. That's actually the one she made up. Her real name is way worse. Have you ever seen Down Periscope? Which, by the way, is a movie that is right up your freaking alley.
I love,
I knew
love
it. I knew
I
it.
love it.
There's a great line where he's like, "It's like, what's your name?" Like Nitro. He's like, "Oh, that's a cool nickname." He's like, "That's my real name. I'm working on a nickname." He's like,
Steve, how about Steve?
anyway, we're not here to talk about those films. We're here to talk about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. So let's get right into it. As I ask every guest, and it's not going to change for the last episode, Alec, why this movie?
Well, I think that, as you and I were talking about it, this being the last episode, doing something that kind of represents the end. We kind of did a little bit of research and said, hey, what are some movies that kind of end a franchise, end an era? And so this movie, I think, while there are movies after it, we're going to forget about the Crystal, and I think they're making another one where
They
Harrison
are
Ford's going
making
to go up
another
there.
one, yeah.
Whatever. I think that we
Which is
can.
insane because he's like 80 years old now.
He does not give a shit about acting anymore. Have you seen it? Like his movies today, he doesn't give a shit. He's just fucking on camera. But anyway, I think that this is like just the perfect movie to kind of end a trilogy. You had 3 seasons, a trilogy of seasons, if you will, for the podcast, and I think that's just a great way to end it. And it's a great movie. We didn't pick a shitty movie. This is like an actual
Oh, this
kind
is
of
one of the best.
movie. Yeah.
So here's the thing. I don't know if you knew this or not. I mean, we've been friends for a long time. I'm sure I probably brought it up at some point, but my two biggest uh influences, I guess, as characters was Sherlock Holmes and Indiana Jones. I think the two of them, would have made a great duo of some kind if they were in a film or a novel together. Or I think so many characters have been based off of these two or inspired by these two. Um, and arguably, The Last Crusade is, in my opinion, the best of the three Indiana Jones movies. And I say three because Crystal Skull is not an Indiana Jones movie. I mean, we can call it an Indiana Jones movie, and by technical terms, I guess it's part of the franchise, if you will. But it was a tag on at the end during a time when Hollywood was just getting money hungry and trying to revamp every single thing. They thought it would be a passing of the torch that would allow them to continue the franchise on, and little did they know Shia LaBeouf was going to lose his mind. So they're going to try to do a fifth one. I believe it's already filmed. Who knows when it's going to come out? Who knows if it's going to be any good? I mean, I have arguments as to why Spielberg shouldn't be involved at this point, but we'll get into that in a second. Let's go through the baseball stats, if you will. Released May 24th, 1989. The movie's 187 minutes, or approximately 2 hours and 7 minutes, which is good. I'm fine with right around 2 hours. Even if you can get into the 2 and 20 minutes, maybe you gotta hook me because it's a little too long. And anything shorter than I think like an hour and a half, and you can't even consider it a movie. There was that one that Dana Carvey did, the turtle one, the Master of Disguise. Is that what it was called?
Yeah.
It was like 64 minutes. Like you can't even call this a movie, guy. Anyway, the budget for the film 48 million, box office 474 million. This
Wow.
movie does almost 10 times its budget, which is insane. I mean, listeners of the podcast will know that our general rule of thumb is if it does double its budget, it's considered a success. So 10 times just goes to show you how amazed the studio was that was going to happen. Screenplay written by Jeffrey Boam, Boam. He did Lethal Weapon, the Lethal Weapon films. He also did The Lost Boys and Funny Farm. You ever seen Funny Farm?
No. Who's in that?
Great Chevy Chase movie.
Oh.
He plays it's perfect for him. He plays a writer who decides to move with his wife up to the country so that he can write this great novel. And he moves to this local like farm town, and he's this city guy in the hillbilly farm. It's great. It's a very good movie. I strongly recommend. Phenomenal, if you will. Story by George Lucas, obviously Star Wars fame, and Menno Mays, who wrote The Color Purple and Empire of the Sun. Very, very serious films. So this one, not as serious as those. Directed by obviously Steven Spielberg. So let's get into it. He did a lot of great movies in the 80s. Spielberg is the quintessential director, right? I mean, we've all got a favorite Spielberg film. But my question to you is, Is Steven Spielberg still relevant today?
Yeah. Well, I think his films are still relevant today. We are still talking about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. We're still talking about Jurassic Park and Schindler's List and
Agreed.
the countless Saving Private Ryan and things that he's
100%.
Has he made a great movie in the last 10 years? Off the top of my head, I don't think so, right? I
Well,
don't.
Alec, lucky for you, we don't have to go off the top of our head with latest technology. Are you ready for this?
Let's do it.
His last series of movies in order, West Side Story, just came out.
Flop.
Huge bomb. Huge bomb. Before that, Ready Player One. Not bad. We actually covered it in the podcast with Lauren. Lauren swears by it. I was entertained by that movie. I will say that. I was entertained by that movie.
No, I love that movie.
You
I'm
do
all love it. I think it's a great mix of pop culture and technology and a good story. It trails off a little bit, but I think it's a lot of fun.
okay, so let me ask you this. As movies go for the last 10 years, would you put that in the top 100?
No,
Okay.
I don't think
So
so.
again, not bad. Before that, The Post.
No,
Yeah, yeah, you're thinking the same thing I am, which is what the hell is The Post? The BFG before that,
no, that was
bomb.
a terrible movie.
Yeah, before that, Bridges of Spies, bomb. Before that, Lincoln, bomb. Before that, Warhorse, bomb. And that brings us all the way back to 2011.
I will say that I liked Lincoln. Daniel
It,
Day-Lewis, Sandra
I,
Day.
I will understand that. So I watched most of it. I will understand that argument, but the facts are it did not do well in theaters. It was not it won a ton of awards for great acting, but ultimately that didn't equate to ticket sales.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think maybe it seems as though the type of films he's made too have changed, right, over time.
Well,
So,
I mean, here's my argument for that is the film industry as a whole has changed. I mean, listen, we both have copies of like the greatest 500, greatest 1,000 movies. You go through that, you're going to find multiple Steven Spielberg movies. He is there's no question his influence on the film industry. The problem is that industry has evolved and he's been part of it for so long that he's gone from one era to another. And I think the era he's in now is just not his strong suit.
yeah, I agree.
So with that being said, film is produced by Robert Watts. He does episode 5 and 6. He did all the Indiana Jones movies, and he also did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is another great film. The film is distributed by Paramount Pictures. I don't know about you. I had to get the Paramount Plus app to watch this for free. 7-day trial, canceled right afterwards. Gotcha.
We did the same fucking thing.
Absolutely.
Same thing.
You're not getting my $9.99 a month or whatever the hell it is.
When we picked this movie, first thing I do, Prime, shit. Netflix, shit. I have the Xfinity app, shit. Nothing's on there. Where the fuck is this thing at? Paramount,
Yeah.
7-day? Perfect.
I think that's what everybody does nowadays. And the best part is I love how these companies have clung to the whole, log in with your email address. Like you realize email addresses are free, right? I can get like 1,000 of them right now, but
Shh.
regardless.
Shh.
The film is based on, again, written by George Lucas, and it's based on matinee movies that he used to go see. So these are movies in the 1930s. If you guys can remember, back then, TVs were not a popular thing. So when movies came out, they weren't always full-length feature films like we think of now. A lot of them were series. They were called serials. So matinee serials were these like monthly, 20-minute TV shows, if you would, that would come to the matinee, and they're a huge hit amongst kids. George Lucas loved them, and he used those characters as the inspiration for Indiana Jones. Tagline for the film: "Have the adventure of your life, keeping up with the Joneses." And my favorite: "The man with the hat is back, and this time he's bringing his dad."
Those are all shitty taglines. Too cliche-ish. So lame.
I mean, this is 1989. This is the set of the cliche, right? Like this is the
No,
development of it.
it's ugly.
I love it. I love that he's bringing his dad. So that's the concept, right? Indiana Jones, the guy you know and love from the first two films. What if his dad was along for the ride? And do you think this movie works if it's not Sean Connery?
No, I don't. I do know that they had a few other actors in mind, but this role and Indy's dad was specifically tailored to Sean Connery because Spielberg always had fun with the idea that 007, Sean Connery played 007 in the early films there, being Indiana's dad. There's this kind of connection there of star power. And I think that he plays the perfect role that is kind of aloof. He's along for the ride, but he's also kind of involved and, he's courageous at the right time. I think he's the perfect casting for it.
Yeah, he plays this sort of character that you feel is very intelligent. At no point do I think he's a buffoon, like Marcus Brody's almost put out to be. But even though he's full of this intelligence, he's still the fish out of water. Like he's still not in his element, doesn't really know what to do. I love when him and Indy first come face to face, and within seconds, Indy's telling him, "I found the tomb," and he's like, "Was the plate that?" Like he just know, like let's cut with the pleasantries and let's get right to what's important, which is this chase that we're on.
There's an earlier scene that kind of, I think, represents what you're describing, right? So, very early in the movie, Indy is in his university, kind of talking to the class, and he says, 90% of archaeology is done in the library, right? That's where you study, that's where you learn things. And X never marks the spot. And I feel like the Sean Connery character lives within that 90% of archaeology, right? Indy's the 10% that's out there in the field making shit happen. And then obviously, we see a little bit of foreshadowing there with the X marking the spot when they go into the tombs in Venice. So I think that's a really kind of scene, very under the radar, but I think that's a big play into the relationship there.
Yeah, I mean, so I want to get your take on a couple other changes that may or may not have been in play when the film was created. So the first one is due to his commitment to the movie, Spielberg had to drop out of directing two other films. So I want to get your take on how you think these films would have turned out had Spielberg been the director.
Ooh, I
Film
love
number,
this.
film number one is Big. Tom Hanks, he makes the wish on the in the carnival game and becomes a full adult overnight.
I'm happy he passed. I think that Big is a fine movie as it is. I think it probably would have been better because you can tell that almost has a Spielberg feel
Oh,
to the kind of whole
100%.
movie,
Yeah.
right? So I don't know how much better he could have made Big. I
Mhm.
think Big was fine on its own. And obviously, if he goes and does that, he's not doing Indy, and then Indy's quality probably suffers a little bit. So happy with that pass.
Yeah, so my love for these films, the Indiana Jones films, I don't want to see Spielberg do anything that's going to take him away from this. But with that being said, yeah, I mean, I could see Big being kind of Spielberg-esque. I don't think it loses much. I think it's a slightly different film, but not immensely different. And honestly, I like Big, but it's just an okay movie to me. So making it better isn't a negative. The second one though is Rain Man.
Hmm. Um, I think that would be a drastically different feel and look to it.
100%, yeah.
Um, it would be interesting because the Tom Cruise portrayal of the obnoxious brother, kind of the eviler of the two, right?
Mhm.
I that doesn't seem Spielberg at all. You don't see that in his movies. That kind
Right.
of, I don't want to say he's a villain, but like it's a very natural portrayal of the situation potentially, right? And I think he probably would have tailored that movie would have been very different. And honestly, I don't think it would have been as good because I think he would have watered down Tom Cruise if Tom Cruise had been
Yeah.
even cast, and the feel and look of that changes. So I'm not a fan. I'm
Yeah.
happy the way things turned out.
You didn't say anything wrong in my book, man. I think Spielberg has a tendency of focusing on like the redeeming qualities of some of the other characters. Nobody in his film is like truly 100% bad. Um, And I agree with you. I think that there would have been a softer side to Tom Cruise's character, again, if he had even been cast. So next is the character named Fedora in the credits, played by Richard Young. He's the guy that gives Indy the fedora hat. In the original script, he was going to be more of a mentor figure. He's actually mentioned in some of the other films. What do you think about that? Having, they were going to remove, it wasn't going to be a Sean Connery father. It was going to be this guy as more of a mentor.
I think the script is drastically different. I like the mystique of a chance encounter having a profound impact on a young person's life. And I think that's what you get with Fedora Guy. I like how that plays out perfectly. I think that if you insert him into the script, you're obviously probably not doing Indy's dad. You can't
Right.
have kind of two mentors, right? And Fedora is the cool bad guy. Right? I mean, in a very, like, as a young man, you see this dude doing something that you want to do, right? He's out there, doing archaeological stuff. And game recognizes game. Like, hey, hey, nice try, bud. You almost had us. Take my hat as a consolation prize, and I'll see you when you get, like, that's kind of the whole feel. Like, I'll see you when you get a little bit older, right? And so it kind of gives him something to look up to. I'm happy there's no mentoring going on. I don't want Indy to have mentoring. He's a free spirit.
Yeah.
He's rough. We don't need that. We don't need a mentoring kind of character in our story.
I love everything about the opening scenes that we get. I love the young Indy played by River Phoenix, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a second. But I also love the immediate cut to him as an adult trying to chase after that same artifact, and like now he's older and he's more about himself and how that kind of set him off on his path. I love everything about that, the backstory we get. So, like you had mentioned earlier, Spielberg was really hyped on getting somebody from the Bond films, specifically somebody who played James Bond, to be Indy's father. So the backups, obviously, to Sean Connery were Gregory Peck and John Pertwee. I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly, but Gregory Peck, obviously, well-known James Bond. Ford and Connery declined the roles of Alan Grant and John Hammond, respectfully, in Jurassic Park. So what are your thoughts on that?
Wow. I'm glad Connery didn't do the John Hammond, who is the old man that's kind of the
Right.
founder of Jurassic Park, right? I think it would have been too much. Just a little bit
He's too rough for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I could see Ford as Alan Grant.
100%. I mean, it's really the same character. Like, there's
Yeah.
really, it's a guy that loves dinosaurs. It's a guy that loves archaeologicals. He wants to be out there amongst the history. But again, these movies, it's so weird, right? These iconic roles are just so tough to envision someone else portraying, because Alan Grant, the character the person that did him, just did it so well, right? And I can't imagine Harrison Ford being in that role.
And the last one I got for you is actually, apparently Sean Connery was offered a role in The Kingdom of the Crystal Skull in 2008. Now, at that point, he had retired from acting, and he declined to come out of retirement to reprise Henry Jones Sr. But that would have been a very interesting take on the number 4 movie that shall not be named.
Is he still married to Catherine Zeta-Jones? No, Michael Douglas.
That's Michael Douglas.
Is Sean Connery? He's an abuser, right? What's his story? Like,
Sean Connery sadly passed away a couple years ago. But yes, there were stories that he did an interview with Barbara Walters where he made a comment that basically it was okay to hit your wife if she gets out of line.
I love bashing a dude that's 6 feet under. Like,
which is ironic because he also enjoys bashing, apparently.
That's true. Yeah.
Which it sucks because honestly, this is one of those, yeah, obviously if he was hitting his wife, it's not okay, and he should not have been hitting his wife. With that being said, does that take away any of the superior quality films that he put out? Does that make him a worse actor? I mean,
are you trying to get me canceled right now? I can't. This is cancel culture, bro. I can't.
What I'm saying is, I think it's an individual's opinion as to whether or not the moral crime that they have committed prevents them from enjoying the product the person puts out. Prime example, I am not a fan of Chris Brown because of the incident. I wasn't a fan of his music before that, but even now when he comes on, I don't really prefer to listen to him. So to me, his crime was more severe than the shitty product he was putting out. Now, Sean Connery, much higher products, much, much higher product level. There's got to be some give and take there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So like like for Sean Connery, domestic abuse, okay. Vehicular homicide, that might be the bridge.
That
There's some sort of
might be the
criminal
crime that
scale.
puts him over, right? Yeah.
Right. No,
I
I
think it's
agree.
got to be part of the court proceedings.
That's the threshold for you. Court proceedings.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're convicted, that's different than being accused. We're innocent until proven guilty in this country.
Wow, you are, you're a liberal when it comes. You love your movies. You're willing to. I'm willing to. Was he found guilty? Okay, then I'm watching this fucking movie right now. I don't give a shit. Okay, hey, do you?
All I'm saying is that there was significant reduction in quality on House of Cards when certain members of the cast left. So the last things on the sports card I want to read off is the rating of the film is PG-13 for sexual content, violence, alcohol, and smoking. And the awards, it only wins one award, the Academy Award for Best Sound Effects, but it was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Sound. It was nominated for the Golden Globes for Best Supporting Actor for Sean Connery. And my favorite, it was nominated for the Grammy Awards for Best Album of Original Instrumental Background Score written for a motion picture or television, which that's a pretty severe category. Like you've got to go down a significant wormhole to get to the best album of original instrumental background score written for a motion picture.
You don't fuck with John Williams. I'm being serious. John Williams is the man.
He's the beast. Absolutely. I'm more making fun of the category. It's crazy.
No, that is true. That is the JV of awards for sure.
So, I mean, do you remember the first time you watched this film?
No, definitely not.
Were you an Indiana Jones fan growing up?
I remember loving this movie at an early age, and I mean, this is a movie I have certainly seen probably 50 times. Like you just throughout it used to be on TNT and TBS, right? I mean, always DVDs on TV. Now, I mean, it's a great movie, and I certainly remember watching it from a young age. Amelia and I, my daughter, were watching it earlier in the week, and she was like, "Dad, I've already seen this movie," and I'm like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Yeah, you have. We're watching this shit. That's what we do."
It's a great film. I mean, so it starts off. Harrison Ford is Indiana Jones. He's played by River Phoenix as a young child. He has this encounter. I mean, it's kind of cliche at this point, but he encounters. It's the explanation of the scar on his chin, the explanation of why he likes the whip, the fedora, the archaeology. But you also get a take out of his father. He comes home in an excitement to tell his father about how he's thwarted some criminals, and his father is focused on something, distracted, and makes him, count to 10 in Latin or Greek, and then kind of doesn't even notice him leaving the room, when the police show up. And then we find out that he has an obsession. Sean Connery has an obsession with the Holy Grail, which as a religious buff, to be. Go ahead.
A cup.
It is the cup that Jesus drank with at the Last Supper, which also supposedly caught some of his blood during the crucifixion. Why the cup went from the dinner table to the crucifixion, I'm not really sure. Maybe it was like a merchandising thing.
DFAT Comics is the publishing branch of Don'tForgetATowel.com, the only place to travel geekly, focusing on creator-owned and independent titles like Hollowed, Pursuit of Plastic, and Fairy, and many more. DFAT Comics will be a mix of genres appealing to every kind of reader. Join the new source of comic book entertainment with DFAT Comics.
I think you only had one cup, so you just like carried it with you. So I think it's more of a canteen. Like that's what it should have been. Is if you have a canteen with you, you use the canteen, and yeah, I mean, can we just a little bit of a coincidence? Same cup. We just.
Yeah, it's definitely a coincidence. Here's the thing, though: has any of the Indiana Jones movies really been about the item? I mean, the Ark of the Covenant was the first one, right? The second one was, I don't even remember what the second one was.
They go to India, and
Right.
there's no religious artifact situation.
No, there is. There's an artifact that's stolen from the local village, and that's why Indy goes to try to get it back. But I don't remember what the artifact was. It was just like a glowing ball or something.
It's not a Christian artifact. It doesn't.
Right.
It's a false deity. Okay, Jesus Christ.
That's why it's not important. It's not Catholic, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
So the third one, they go for the Holy Grail. I mean, why not, right? You literally, it's the stereotypical like best.
What
thing.
else? What else you got left?
Might as well. But so his father's obsessed with it, and some guy, Walter Donovan, approaches Indy and says, "Listen, we got some new clues as to where the Holy Grail might be. We sent an expedition, and the guy who was leading the expedition suddenly went off the map. Can't find him." And Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, is like, "Oh, you're asking the wrong Jones. You got to go ask my dad about this." And they're like, "Well, actually, we did. He was the first guy." Great reveal.
Dun dun dun!
I love the reveal. It's so like he walks right into it. It's awesome. Very stereotypical. So then he goes and basically finds his dad and finds the Grail. I mean, what's great about rewatching this, there's no point in this movie where I'm thinking Indiana Jones is not going to succeed.
No, you know he's going to succeed. Although, and I want to get into this a little bit later, there were some other versions of this script.
Oh, lay it on me.
Ending.
Let's not wait. Lay it on me.
Now?
Yeah, I want to hear all about them.
So drastically different script early on. It was about the Monkey King.
The Monkey
So this
King.
is like the Monkey King. So this was like a Chinese artifact that gave you everlasting life. So if you ate a pear from the Monkey King's garden, it gave you everlasting life. And he starts off in Africa, and then he goes to China. And I want to describe to you, because this is how fucking terrible this script was. I'm being serious. The ending of the movie. So he gets to the Monkey Kingdom, the Monkey King's kingdom, his castle, if you will, which is guarded by gorillas.
Obviously.
When I'm reading this, I instantly go to Congo.
Oh, right. 100%.
Right? These are the type of gorillas that I have envisioning that are about to whoop some ass.
Yeah.
And there's a scene in which Indiana Jones is riding a rhinoceros.
Love it.
Picking off with the rhinoceros's horns these gorillas. At another point, and the Nazis are still involved. At another point,
Wait, hang on. The Nazis are in China?
yes,
Oh,
because they still want
my
everlasting life. They want everlasting life. So, at another point, the gorillas, who I don't know how they communicate, they are now on Team Indy.
Sign language, obviously.
Sign language. You're right. They're now on Team Indy. And during the final,
they really respected the rhino charging and were like, this guy's got what it takes.
The final scene has the gorillas overtaking and controlling a tank. They have entered into the tank. They are driving the Nazi
See, here's the thing. I was not on board with this until that point. Now I need to see this in live action. That's an incredible. Is that the plot of Indy 5? I really hope so.
And that's the new one. But what you do see from that though is that they obviously rewrote that, but they did keep two elements. Instead of Monkey King pears, they made it the Holy Grail because they wanted to one of the Nazis. They still wanted everlasting life.
Like, how can we make this more Catholic?
Yeah, those white people love to go to this movie. We need more of that. But so I mean that's what they kind of kept with, and then also that story did involve Indy's dad, so they kind of merged some of those elements to
All
give you
right.
the Last Crusade.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, I mean, the thing about this film is I enjoyed watching him get into all these little, different how do I get out of this? I'm tied up and how do I figure this out type scenarios. But at no point did I think he was really any kind of threat. Harrison Ford did do almost all of his own stunts in this film, which are, I mean, there's some pretty serious stunts. I think the biggest one obviously being when he's getting dragged along by the tank. But that was impressive. Harrison Ford also was the heart behind hiring River Phoenix. They were in a movie together prior to this. River Phoenix sadly passes away, about 5 years after this. Um, Joaquin Phoenix's brother. I mean, I'll say what everybody else is thinking. Kind of, wish they would have swapped. But so if you could pick which Phoenix would go, which one would you have gone with?
This honestly, this is like a highly philosophical debate right now. Um, I'm gonna lose some street cred, if you will. This like gets back to like the Tupac and Biggie and like how good they were. Let's just go East Coast, West Coast for a second. I think part of what made Biggie and his legacy so long lasting is a short sampling. He didn't have enough time to make.
Oh,
He didn't have enough time to make bad albums,
okay. All right.
right? So if you make two good albums, that's what you are judged by. That third album could have been a fucking bomb. And so in a lot of ways, it's the same with River Phoenix. That he could have went on to make bad movies. We judge him on the sample size, and obviously,
Here's
you
the
look at
thing,
a
though.
movie like this.
His best friend was Keanu Reeves, who can do no wrong. So, I mean, I think that's the argument as to why River Phoenix would have been amazing. Just amazing by association.
So you are like you want Joaquin dead.
I mean,
That's
I think he ruins movies with few exceptions, but for the most part, he ruins movies. He's the Mark Wahlberg of movies. He ruins them.
holy shit. This
Yeah.
is some cold-blooded savagery right now.
I mean, listen, it's the final episode. You're gonna get the truth now.
I don't care about getting more fans.
Well, we were gonna
I'll
try
say
to
what I
book
want.
him. We were gonna try to book him next season, but I guess at this point it doesn't really matter. I love, so obviously everybody knows Indiana Jones. The name Indiana comes from George Lucas's dog. I love them playing that into this whole, storyline. Harrison Ford, his character is Indiana Jones. Sean Connery keeps calling him Junior the whole movie, and Sean Connery's character is Professor Henry Jones. So finally, in the final scene, we get the, why is he calling you Junior? Well, because that's his name. He's Henry Jones Jr. Like, I thought your name was Indiana. And then Sean Connery says a legendary line. Go ahead.
That's the dog's name?
We named the dog Indiana.
Whatever.
What do you mean, whatever? That's a classic cinematic line right there. No?
No. I mean, no.
You're crazy. You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. Indiana Jones' trademark hat, jacket, and whip currently reside in the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. I mean, it is literally American history. What can be said more about this film? What's your favorite scene?
Oh, that's a good question. My favorite scene in the movie, I will, and maybe it's a bit prolonged, but I will go the scene arrives at the castle to the escape and motorcycle chase thereafter. I love how they break into the castle, which is like him doing an Irish,
It's great.
accent. Where are the tapestries?
I caught Sniffles.
Right, right. And then it's the first meeting with the dad.
Yeah.
And there's a great witty banter there, right? And then it's the whole we're tied up. There's some sexual tension because your girl Doody has hooked up with both Joneses, right?
Which is,
Then
I'm glad they didn't go further into that because that was a little cringy, but they only touch on it. They don't like get too descriptive.
but
You know, yeah, it's there
Pipe was laid.
for sure.
And then you have the breakout scene, right? So they're tied up. Stupid, library. Sean Connery, can't light the thing on fire, and he drops it. Huge fire now. Just great banter back and forth. Great escape. I think that's my favorite scene. I'm gonna go with the second smaller favorite scene too, which is when Brody is lost in like Marrakesh or wherever he is. He's like, does anyone speak English? And then he's so stupid, like he walks right into the two Germans. And the guy's like, run. He's like, oh, what am I supposed to do right now? Run. Huh? Just a classic stupid moron.
All around classic scenes. I love. There's a part where Indiana Jones's father is escaping from the Zeppelin, and his father says, "I didn't know you could fly," and then he says, "Fly, yes; land, no," which I thought was great watching it now because Harrison Ford has had 2 plane crashes, which I was like, apparently he can't land. That was a good foreshadowing. Sean Connery was actually only 12 years older than Harrison Ford during this film, so that just goes to show you how old Harrison Ford is now.
That is wild.
Sean Connery's age.
It shows you how bad people age. Sean Connery looks like he's 107. He's a very Morgan Freeman-ish kind of person.
Well, they were dyeing his beard during the film in order to make him look older because obviously the age was so close. One thing I did like though is obviously there's this glaring scene at the end where Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, picks the correct Grail. And I mean, you're talking a sea of Grails. There's got to be close to 30 or 40 Grails there. How does he pick the right one? Throwaway scene in the beginning of the film. In Henry Sr.'s house near the start of the film, there's a painting on the wall of the knight holding a Grail. The Grail shown looks remarkably similar to the false Grail chosen by Elsa at the end of the film.
Ooh, did not know that.
So that was a setup, which I thought only played into more of why it was difficult for him to spot the real one, having been raised with this picture. It might have been stuck in his head, but regardless, yeah, man. I mean, is there anything more to say? Great film. Let's get into the 3 questions, and we can figure this out together, whether or not it was a great film.
Okay, let's do it.
All right, here we go. So the 3 questions, the crackpot team that came up with, a couple different from last season. Let's start with question number 1. Does the progress and rhythm of the movie fit?
100%. I think when you think about movies, especially when we're kind of analyzing it a bit more than maybe the first time we saw something, you think about pace, you think about what would you change, you think about some of those kind of details. And I'll be honest, I don't think there's anything I'm changing from the speed of the film to the, action sequences. I think that the pacing is great. There's actually 6 different chase scenes in this movie. You have a train, a boat, a motorcycle, a plane, a car, and a foot chase, I believe. So, there's these scenes, these action scenes woven in, between this very witty dialogue and these great relationships. So yeah, it's perfect in every way for me.
Yeah, I mean, well said. I think the progress of this film, I think, is really what adds to it being so amazing. Like you said, there's a lot of chase scenes, but it doesn't feel overly crammed with chase scenes. There's some slow scenes where they kind of try to plot develop, but those don't last very long either. They do a great job of plot developing during action sequences or, maybe more suspenseful sequences. And it keeps you locked in the whole time. The witty banter back and forth makes you not want to miss any of the dialogue. even when there isn't something necessary to watch on the screen. So I think you hit it right on the head. I think the progress and the rhythm fit perfectly.
But
Uh,
you bring up a great point, and that's like even during those action scenes, there is good dialogue still happening. You're still
right.
they're developing. That relationship between Junior and Senior is developing during action scenes in a lot of ways where in movies you might not see that because it's just all about the action and how can we raise the stakes and make it
Right.
cooler and the bigger explosions.
Yeah, Michael Bay,
Yep.
Question number 2. What, if any, part of the film speaks to you and why?
Um, I think the part that speaks to me would be the desire for something, right? I think this entire movie really is, in a lot of ways, about motivation, right? The Donovan, right? The guy that kind of is the producer or the funder of this entire excursion, right?
Mhm.
Sells his soul quite literally. Teams with the Nazis. He's the first guy to sip out of the cup. He's doing this because he wants to live forever, right? Indy's motivation is really to rescue his dad. And then, as it progresses, it's to stop the Nazis from getting the Grail. Um, Doody's favorite character, her motivation is like, while she is a Nazi and, she's on this team, she also does believe in the art, archaeological aspects of this a little bit.
Right.
So, for me, I respect the passion to go all in for something that you want, and I think that's something that something that we don't do well enough anymore is go all in for what you believe in and what you're passionate about. Because
Yeah.
we got a whole bunch of bull crap in our lives, stopping us from doing the the things that make us happy. We're doing other shit to pay the bills,
Yeah.
not
Well
necessarily
said.
what's happy.
Well said. As far as what speaks to me, I mean, like I said, I'm a huge fan of Indiana Jones as a character, and what draws me to him is probably kind of what you touched on, his drive. He wants he wants these artifacts to be in museums so that everybody can enjoy them, and we as humans, as a human race, can learn from them and grow as society. And he will stop at nothing to do that. His passion to make that happen is immense. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching the adventures he was going on, which is why I loved this film and the other ones. So the last one, and we kind of already touched on this a little bit. What is the most important sequence in the movie?
The most important sequence. Uh, I don't know if it's the most important, but what I'll say is that I think it's the funnest. I think it's a great way to end a movie, and that's kind of the entire um, last 20 minutes. They essentially have been captured by the Nazis, right? They are at you know the site, and they're going through these um, challenges, if you will, in order to get to the Grail. What I like about it is it is the climax, but it's a really slow climax, right? All of the action really has occurred at this point. And now it's like, can Indy overcome these three challenges? He's got to do a somersault. Then you have to walk across, you have to walk across a bridge, kind of deal. And then it's like the selection of the cup, and it's slow, but you don't lose interest in anything, right? So I think that's a really just powerful kind of scene for the last climax, which is, I think, counter to a lot of other climaxes, which are all about the action. Even when Sean Connery gets shot,
Mhm.
kind of deal. I think it's just a good ending.
Yeah, I mean, a lot can be said for that scene. To be honest with you, I struggle with this question. Even in the past, a lot of times I'll pick scenes where I think might hinge on creating the plot in the movie, typically early on or whatever. But for a movie like this, that I think, like we touched on, is just good all around. It's hard to find the most important sequence. Um, I think if I had to pick, I really like the sequence in the library in the beginning. Everything from finding the tomb to the boat chase, and that seems very important to me because it sets up kind of how this adventure is going to be. This is the level of action you're going to get, stepping off the plane in Italy. So it really kind of sets the tone for the rest of the adventure that we're on. So I really like that. Um, but listen, 3 questions down for the last time on this film, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being horrible and 10 being a masterpiece. What do you rate this film?
9.5. I think it's tough to give anything a 10, but I think it hits on everything that I want in a movie. And the other thing I'll say for me that really makes this, a bit more special is the timelessness of it, right? Another Steven Spielberg movie is Goonies, right? I can watch Goonies 1,000 times, and I can watch it with my daughter or my mom or a stranger, and we're gonna get enjoyment and be able to kind of bond over it, right? And this movie is no different. It's obviously longer than the Goonies, but it's just a perfect, fun family movie that you can watch with anybody, and it has everything that you want in a good movie, I think.
I think we need to talk about you bringing homeless people back to your house to watch movies. But
I'm starting a podcast on that. That is going to be my podcast.
That's a great idea.
So I want to slow down.
Mm-hmm.
Did I ever tell you about this TV show idea that I had?
You did not, but I love when we have these conversations. Go ahead. Are you sure you want to say this publicly?
Yeah, I do. Because if it gets any traction, I want that traceability back to me. I wanted a TV show similar to The Apprentice, but it's where we take 10 homeless people off the streets. It's a very like remember Trading Places with Dan Aykroyd and Eddie Murphy? It's very similar to that. But here's the thing:
you put them in a boardroom and you make them compete for like a high-profile job.
It won't be craziness, but I want it to be like one of these emotional heartstring TV shows where we are, taking these 10 people. And obviously, we don't want the head cases. We don't want the I want the substance abusers. The normal homeless. Like, oh, they fell in hard. Like, I need the fell in hard times, right?
Right.
Like, I'm living in my car. I need help.
Not the believe in aliens homeless.
Right. No, I need them. I need people that will make this TV show good. And so you put them through like a series of things, and each week one of them gets fired, put down. But
killed, right?
But the other ones keep progressing, right? In the end, they kind of get this great, amazing job opportunity to go change their life. Here's
what I will say about that. I don't think you run the risk of anybody stealing that idea. But you know what? That does remind me, though. Do you remember? This is a very 90s thing. Do you remember bum fights?
Oh, what? I don't know what website. How do we even, before YouTube, how do we get these things? But yeah, no, I love a bum fight.
Some guy, if you could imagine Jackass with no morals, he'd go around in different cities and he'd pay homeless people to fight. And then it turned into like other, pay homeless people to do other crazy stuff. And he put it out like a DVD. You could like order it online.
That's how it was.
A DVD, yeah. Okay, so let's move on to everybody's favorite game, Guess That Tomato.
Okay, let's do it. Musical interlude.
So something a little different about season 3 is I'm going to let you make your guess as to what the score is on Rotten Tomatoes for the fans. But I'm also going to give you 2 hints, the critic score, and I'm going to give you 3 movies that are within 2% of this movie's score. These 3 movies are going to be in the categories of the good, the bad, and the ugly. So let's start with your guess, Alec. The final guess on Gutsy Media Podcast. What is your guess for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
87.
87. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give you the critic score. 88.
Oh, shit.
What?
Oh, shit.
And now your 3 movie clues. The Good, Memento, Christopher Nolan's breakout hit, a movie told in reverse about a man with short-term memory problems, a movie that is unlike anything that you have seen before, and a movie that would birth one of the greatest directors of our lifetime. Movie number 2, 2001, A Space Odyssey.
Holy shit.
It's a bad movie because you probably only watched it once.
That's the
Watch
problem.
it again, then watch it again, then watch it again. And by the 8th or 9th time, your brain begins to melt and you really start to appreciate it for what it is, a truly bizarre masterpiece. And lastly, the ugly Icarus, the Russian doping documentary. It's an ugly look at a very disturbing series of events that led to the reveal of the state-sponsored doping practice in Russia that has been going on since the Cold War. It's on Netflix, and it's worth the watch. So with those clues, Alec, your guess was an 87. Do you want to change your guess?
Okay, so let's slow this down a bit. You specifically chose 2001: A Space Odyssey. You could have chose 1,000 other movies. You chose that. For your viewers that may not know me, that's in my top 2 favorite movies of all time. And like you mentioned, you have to watch it 36 times before you enjoy it the first time.
So I had the
Uh,
honor of watching that for the first time with you. I'll have you know, I also chose Memento for you specifically because I watched that with you for the first time ever.
I need you back in my life. Listen, I'm being serious. I think about this all the time. Let's just leave our wives and move in
Done.
together. Let's just do it.
Wait, hang on. You have to convince me more. Your guess, 87. Do you want to change it?
There's a lot of stress right now. I'm stressed. I'm going to stick to my guns. I think it needs to be an 89 or a 91, but I'm sticking to 87.
Sticking with 87. The actual answer is 94.
I
A
knew it.
94. You gave it a 9.5. I thought you were going to nail this. 94.
You're right.
94 is a high score. Indiana Jones Last Crusade is a great movie. And I mean, you could have picked a better one to end the podcast with. Alec, you're my first guest. You're my last guest. I've had a wild ride doing this show. Started pretty early on in the pandemic, and I'm hoping that my exit means the pandemic is slowly over. But before I let you go, before I sign off for the final time, I've got to end this podcast as I've ended most of my other podcasts. And that's by saying it's a firm belief of the owners of Don't Forget a Towel that everybody geeks out on something. While it may not be movies and comic books, maybe it's stopping Nazis and finding only Christian artifacts. So I've got to ask you, what is it you're geeking out on right now?
Soccer. Against your pop culture references, I'm all in on soccer. The lamest of all sports, but I'm truly geeking out. But we're not ending quite yet, by the way.
Okay.
I have some questions for you.
I love it. I'm all about it.
So this is obviously, as you have said, your planned last podcast.
Correct.
And so I only thought it fitting that I ask you a few questions about your experiences for the last 3 seasons, and 47 total episodes. So just some very basic fun ones.
Love it.
All right. Musical interlude. Do we have to do anything? Is there some sort of
I mean, we can,
beatbox? Okay. What has been your favorite episode that you recall during these last 3 seasons?
Great question. I've had some good ones. I try not to pick a favorite guests, because I think it really depends on, the movie they pick and, how they're feeling that day. So I've got to base it off of like the movie and just overall good conversation. I think me and Matt had a great episode in season 1. Man, that's tough. That's really tough. I really like the live shows, because you get the feedback from the fans and stuff like that. So yeah, I guess I'll go with the live show I did with Casey. That was a good one.
Okay, good. What movie throughout the course of this has your opinion changed of? Have you, in your research, like you probably have seen the
Oh
majority
yeah.
of the movies more than once, right? So was there like a time when you were like, oh snap, I'm realizing and seeing new things that have made this film better or worse? What movie changed the most, do you think, for you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, so I've actually mentioned it a couple times on the podcast that doing the research really has an influence on me as to whether or not I like the movie. I think, as a movie fan, the entertainment part of it is only part of it, right? Like doing the research and finding out what went into the movie and how it got made and the passion behind it and stuff like that really kind of enhances the experience for me at least. So there is definitely quite a few movies that I think, maybe after watching I thought was okay, and then doing the research I really, it really grew on me. And honestly, I can't. None of them are coming to mind right now, so I'm sorry I'm put on the spot. But there's definitely been a few for sure. I think the biggest one that comes to mind would, I get, Seven Samurai. Again, only because we just did that one. So knowing the backstory behind that, a foreign film that was over 3 hours, black and white. I didn't think I was gonna like it at all. And then doing the research, you really get to know, about the movie and how much it influenced Hollywood and had such a huge impact on the movies we enjoy today. So that one probably changed a lot during the research.
There could be a listener right now that will say the same thing about your podcast in 20 years. You've changed their mind and you've made them get into movies. So your influence in pop culture could be much larger than you think.
I appreciate that, man. That'd be
La-
awesome.
Last question for you. Why are you ending?
Ooh, that's a good question. So, honestly, I mean, it's kind of cliche to say, but I got into it because the pandemic had started. Found myself just like everybody else trapped inside, with a little extra time and kind of being bored. So, I like talking about movies. I like watching new movies, and the biggest thing is I think you kind of find yourself watching the same old movies because you don't get out of your rut. So doing the podcast gave me an opportunity to kind of sit down with my friends, talk about movies, which I love to do anyway, but also see some of the movies that, maybe I didn't know about. Like, I've had so many conversations over the years about movies that I bring up and people are like, "Oh, I never even heard of that movie." And it was such an influential movie on me. So it's kind of like, how can I find out what other people's influential movies are that maybe I don't know about and give us an opportunity to talk about them. So that's what bred the idea for the podcast. And I started it because it was going to be a lot of fun. And as it went on, the fun was still there, but it became more about editing and getting the episodes out at the right time and doing the research. And some of these movies had an extensive amount of research that went into them. So the amount of time dedicated to all the other stuff became greater than the amount of time dedicated to the fun stuff. And this is where the cliche comes in. When it stops being fun, it's just kind of time to hang it up. So I figured now was a good time to do that.
Well, we're gonna miss this.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate you putting the questions together. That's pretty cool. It caught me off guard. Listen, who knows what's going to happen in the future? Who knows if the podcast comes back one day, or maybe I just get bored and want to do a one-off episode. By all means, keep following us on Facebook. Maybe I'll posting from time to time there. I don't plan on taking down the page. I am going to get rid of the Twitter and Instagram. I just don't use them. And the YouTube will always stay up because it's free, number one. And number two, it'd always be cool to come back and look at the episodes. So by all means, YouTube, Facebook, and Letterbox as well. I've actually started the Letterbox account with the podcast, and I've kind of enjoyed logging my movies and seeing at the end of the year all the different movies I watched and stuff. So I'll keep those active. Um, hey, this is it. I really appreciate it. Thanks, Alex, so much for being a guest, and I will talk to you guys later.